Can you see it? Can you see her there?
The lady Mhlanga Bakusho, yes.
Yes. So you can read that. Thank you.
It says, thanks, my friend, for the kind words and the vote of confidence.
So she's confirming the big message. You can read the big message that I had posted at the top there in the first tweet. Thank you.
Oh.
Can you see the big message?
Yes, Simba.
The announcement here.
Yeah, well, I can't see the big message.
The announcement.
But I can see the one it says one of the finest journalists we have. The other guy, Josh.
No. Come out of that message and go to the previous one, the actual announcement.
Okay, wait a minute. It will take me. Or maybe can I go to X?
Yes, come back to X and then check on the dashboard. There's another message that is there.
Yeah, let me.
There's another message that is there. Can you see it?
Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said Spain, some federal weeks. This given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say he must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed.
Linked up with us 4 years ago. She was investigating the Botswana community's media scammer. They are on Hopewell, called Frank Museveni, with preference with them. I accept, I agree.
So yeah, thank you very so and now can you see her confirmation at the bottom? Now you can see a confirmation on the first message, the one that says the one that she says thank you for the vote of confidence. Yeah,
I've seen that. Thanks, my friend, for the kind words and the vote of confidence. It's after that.
Wow, you see.
Yeah, I can see that.
Absolutely. So basically, Mhlanga was just a journalist 5 years ago in Botswana. She wasn't in government at all. Okay. She was just a what? She was just a journalist in Botswana. When she contacted me, I've never met Mhlanga physically at all at any time. I don't even know her physically. But she contacted me because I had exposed the Botswana people's own Hopewell character, Hopewell Chin'ono character, who is called Frank Museveni, who was also trying to trap Job Sikala 5 years ago. And he used Job Sikala's name to destroy other people. I don't know who those people were. I couldn't know. But when I detected that Frank Museveni is after destroying Job Sikala, I exposed him immediately. So a man contacted me back then, and she was also confused. A lot of Botswana people were confused back then. This man keeps destroying Botswana. He divides people. This is what she said to me. He seems to get money from one wing, one grouping. Later on, he seems to get money from the government and to publish lies about people and then destroy people's characters, destroy people and divide society. So they were confused. Who is this Frank Museveni? So I was asked to help the Botswana people with expertise, with my knowledge, what I had, to help them to cleanse Botswana's community of this Frank Museveni, this Hopewell Chin'ono character. That was 5 years ago. Little did I know that the information that I am empowering Botswana with is information that is going to make their country remove the ruling party. It's going to empower their society and make their society strong. Soon after this, the former president, Ian Khama, also contacted me. So it wasn't just a man who contacted me. Ian Khama also contacted me, and he was in exile. He was in hiding. He was about to be poisoned. There have been poison attacks on him, on his life. And when he did, I quickly interviewed him. I also helped them with some advisory about these characters, who to avoid. I gave them my expert advice. And do you know what? Little did I know that 3 years later, they would remove the ruling party. And so Botswana is free today, Mudara. It's free.
Yes, I listen.
You see, I was just doing this to show people that this disinformation, the Hopewell Chin'ono characters, they do stop a whole community, a whole country from obtaining freedom. And you can see there, Emang is confirming. And Mudara, you can use these screenshots next time. Because our children need to know who stopped them, who stopped their freedom, who made it difficult. This is evidence. This is evidence.
This is the Zambia that we knew before. You remember the Kwacha you used to require 4 or 5 wheelbarrows to go and buy groceries at a shop. Right now, the kwacha, at some point, it was 1-to-1 with the South African rand without randifying. They are now upper middle class economy.
Wow, without randifying. So they didn't need to adopt the rand. Remember, that is what some people at Mutuli had one time proposed, that maybe to fix Zimbabwe we need to adopt the rand. So they didn't need to randify. They just kwacharized their country. They remained kwacha people, and the kwacha is now the boss. Wow, Mdara, this is huge, right?
Whilst Muno Zimbabwe, we sell our minerals in foreign currency, in the US dollar. I was shocked in Zambia. They are paid in kwacha, and that kwacha is convertible. Kwacha, you can go with it anywhere, and you can change it into the local currency of that particular country. That's how good things have become in Zambia.
Yeah. No, you know what, my brother, as you can see, freedom is not complicated, correct? It's not complicated, correct?
Very, very correct.
Eh?
Very correct. It's not.
Things are not complicated. It's not complicated to remove the ruling party. Yeah?
No.
So easy. Wow. No, folks, this is massive. This is really massive. And someone is asking me the high hot seat. What seat is coming back? Yeah. Someone is asking me and said, "Oh, headline boy, headline yakatadzeko na Paddington. Zvandanyora izvozvo, Chamisa's lawyer rescues Blessed Mhlanga. Uri kuramba here kuti Chamisa's lawyer asiriye." Some people are finding it, Mdara, some people are finding it hard to believe that this is Chamisa's lawyer.
That lawyer, the greatest lawyers we have.
Sorry?
Zimbabwe. The Fulcrum is one of the best lawyers we have. Tabanimpof is one of the best lawyers we have in the region. It's very good.
Well, some people had said that Fulcrum is useless. Fulcrum.
No. I've actually attended court on one of my mines with Fulcrum representing another mine. So their case was before us, before we got in with ours. That guy is so composed. That guy is just knowledgeable in his law. In fact, what happened when he represented Chamisa at that time, remember that's when the judiciary capture was solidified. From when it was then solidifying with the coming in of Malaba. So it was not him losing, it was the system rigging the whole things. That's why, but he did put a very credible argument, as you know, and he actually won the argument. It's only that it was a script that was pre-done. But now if you look at the case of Blessed Mhlanga, again, it shows you the capture of judiciary and the need for grounded lawyers like Kapanu Mpofu, because that case was never supposed to be him tried. But you realize they removed the doctrine of vicarious liability. They then went on straight to charge an employee when they were supposed to charge the employer. So I think Fulcrum then directed them to see what they didn't see. And also as well, with the twists and turns of the case, the issue that, or the fact that the real culprit, the employer, was out, was an embarrassment to the international judiciary system. And they had to give him at least a bail, of course, pending, obviously, as we now know, pending acquittal, because there's no more case that's on Blessed or Dara B, because in the first place, there was no case. It's only that the judiciary wanted to exercise its capture. and it wanted to scare journalists, journalists from reporting what is factual or from interviewing people that carry news. We are all now very afraid of going to give our interviews to other. That's why we now resort to international platforms. Because if you go in and get an interview, like I wanted to go to ZFM, like I've done before, it's scary. You don't know what comes in next. But of course, there must be always, the Constitution protects journalists and the international, there was International Journalist or Journalism Day the other day. They are protected. These people, Simba, you are a very scarce species that should always be protected. Thank you.
No, I appreciate Dara. You know, we have a country here that has produced the richest man in the world. Elon Musk was financed by Zimbabwe's stones, by Zimbabwe's minerals. And we need to find a way. There has to be a solution here of producing the next billionaires from our community. Why not? Why not us? We need to create the same power that that we have created on Elon Musk. Yeah, and I see you Zimbabweans, you're on Twitter space. You never talk about it. That we created, that you created Elon Musk. That your village, where you come from, is the one that financed Elon Musk. You never talk about it, but you are busy talking about characters who keep dividing your society. Characters who lie to you on a day-to-day basis. I see a lot of ZANU-PF members here. You ZANU-PF members, I never see you. Every time, mnenge mchingo tukirira, but you don't boast. Your stones financed Elon Musk. Aiwaka, vanhu vezanu muri kupi? Where are the ZANU-PF? I've got some ZANU-PF people. You are quiet. We never see you. Elon Musk's father is on video, announced that he made his own son the richest man in the world using illegal Zimbabwe stones, minerals of Zimbabwe. And you never talk about it. You spend time every time criticizing us, calling us names, eh? Munotichedzera names isusu, Simba chikanzi azodai, Simba chikanzi azodai, hey azodai. But we never see you boasting. We never see you advertising your country. Where is your patriotism? Maybe we need to arrest you, get you arrested. Because you don't talk about how we can empower the next black person to become rich and to become powerful and also to be a change maker. Like right now, we have changed Zimbabwe. You should be proud of yourselves. You should actually be approaching Elon, what's his name? Elon, even Trump, and telling him, Trump, you were financed by our money. That is our money that made you president of America. But you don't talk about it. Come on. You know, and then, you know, Mdara's not in it, Zimbabweans. Where are your priorities? Eh?
I'll tell you quickly one thing that ZANU-PF don't understand, that this country is capable of creating wealth for everyone. This country is
capable. Was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions, and imposed.
You know kuti vanodhamba vagofara kurasa nhabwa vachitaura kachiroti kekubeit bridge ndoti aiwa dzinoenda uku kubeit bridge ngadziende dzega dzinouya kuno dzoya dzega. Then we are done with my head on content. But some people, they don't see it. They don't know that. And I don't know where these guys come from. They actually all behave as if, as we are saying over and over again, as people subscribe to Starlink, they are subscribing into Zimbabwe money. Certain conditions Musk was made what he is by Zimbabwe.
Imagine.
You know, they are Zimbabweans, man. I don't understand. We are too academic. You know, there's so much books, and we don't have practice. Elon Musk comes here, he takes everything. The Chinese, I know of a Chinese guy in Kwekwe. This Chinese guy came at Famba Networker, literally. Right now, as we speak, he is worth 350 million United States dollars. We are letting our borders are so porous that people, my Chinese, they come with virtually nothing. They go back, to the extent, very mono, they will start treating.
website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport.
Sorry, did I lose you? Sorry.
Yeah, those are the conditions.
Sorry, the Chinese, most of them, they come visually with nothing, and there is no law that protects indigenous people. We are made to compete with people. Right now, I've seen a lot of parastatals, Chinese parastatals, Chinese government companies coming in here to set shop in Zimbabwe. Parastatals, and using our own NRZ, our own parastatals cannot go out and set up anything. It's also our laws are so weak that we are easily manipulated and exploited by foreigners. There's no protection to locals. So at the end of days,
certain conditions
China has reconstructed itself using Zimbabwean minerals, because they are hoarding lithium. They are literally hoarding lithium. They are buying it at close to nothing or next to nothing because our people are desperate, and they are stockpiling in China.
And is also required
the next few years, we will be begging China for the same lithium that we gave them at less than $100 a ton.
It's been admitted
then that time will probably be costing $100,000 US, but we don't see it. We don't have leaders that create that store value for the future. The future generation is so exposed that they will just be taken over. Some other big nations come, and then we will wait for another 1,000 years for minerals to formulate. We don't know that, and the government doesn't know that. We don't have anything for the future generation. Everything. Ukaona the amount of investment that it's here does not equal whatsoever.
Sorry, a co-host, your mic is on. Yes. Okay, go ahead, Ndara.
Now we have got to announce the minerals. United States is done with Ukraine. They have literally signed up a few mineral contracts with Ukraine in exchange for the billions that they poured into Ukraine. We have such kind of minerals in Zimbabwe. We actually can survive, but we don't even know. Do you know, we don't even know what rare earth minerals are. We don't know. All we know is probably gold. And gold is sold at a price that we know. But remember minerals. Somebody will got minerals like antimony. Antimony, myself and Farah who have been trying to lobby the preservation of antimony, but it's going fast. Though the element, use or mineral, use ammunition, all these wars, they are funded that way. China is holding it from Zimbabwe, and Zimbabwe, no one is going through MMC there. And yet China, in my files, they go to South Africa, they refine it or they beneficiate it in South Africa, and it goes out with the South African steel when it sends as gold, not here. Right now, you've seen these big bombs are in Kenya, canoodling with
when Simba came out with this documentary, were you part of parcel of actually creating exposure for what he was doing? Like he did that, right?
I did not talk to Simba that time then, but all I know definitely is now that there's been a paradigm shift. The shift is gone to Kenya. And any guy almost bankrupted the Kenyan government. And President Ruto is a looter. You know that. So now he is being frequently visited by these guys.
So it's shifted, right? Okay? So now it's shifted. Are you helping to literally like assist that shift? Honestly, like Simba, I'm so sorry you'll be offended, but like it affects it affects me when people think you're crazy. You are acknowledging what his work. You're acknowledging. Wait. Wait. You're acknowledging Simba's work. Okay, you're acknowledging it, right, and you're respecting it, and then afterwards, then it's hard for you to make it public. So what's the problem?
What do you mean? I don't understand what you mean. Maybe you can come again. I don't.
Okay. No, I was saying. I was saying. You said, Kuti, you acknowledged that Al Jazeera stuff.
Bella appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions, and because I think the judge said Spain, some federal it's given at least essential at this. But once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions, and because I think the judge said Spain, some federal it's given at least essential at this. But once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions, and because I think the judge said Spain, some federal it's given at least essential at this. But once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions, and because I think the judge said Spain, some federal it's given at least essential at this. But once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions, and because I think the judge said Spain, some federal it's given at least essential at this. But once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you.
People believe Simba, my sister. People know Simba is intelligent. People know Simba is a genius. They know that. We know that. Everybody knows that. You can only ignore him at your own risk. What he does is real. What happened when the government denied the involvement of top brass in the government on the gold mafia? The CIA went deep into it. They went up to Putney, and they are doing it for other members of the gold mafia. Anyway, they uprooted Putney all the way. I'm only afraid that a new link has been made, and the new link now involves.
It's not even about us believing him. He risks his life, right? And then now we think people think he's crazy. To be honest, everyone thinks like Simba is crazy, right? But he's risking his life. And I don't even know. I actually want to ask Simba, how do you even get paid for this? Because you're risking your life for people. You're risking your life for people who think you're unopenga. Like, how do you stay true to that space? And I just want to say, Simba, you know what, like, I actually now believe you. Like, before I even just thought, what, I believe you now, Simba. I believe you, and I love you, and I trust, and I it's painful. Like, he's been doing this for years. Okay, you guys you go to jobs. Today, right now, you're gonna cut the phone. You're gonna cut the live. You're gonna go to work or you're gonna go sleep. But you have a job. This is his life. This is his livelihood. He has no source of income. This is his only source of income, right? Okay? So this is his whole life. He's dedicating his whole life as an anemuri, right? But he said, no, I'm doing this, right? Okay? You can be like, okay, I'm just shutting off. I don't care about Jeba online. Okay? And then what? But he can't do that because this is life, right?
Yeah, no, thank you for the kind words. Sis, the greatest reward that we have is to help another, is to help our children, is to help our community for generations to come. And if there's any money we can make, it should come from that. Should come from people coming together and doing something different to rescue society. And that has been the devotion of myself over the years, over the last 17 years now. And this work has at least achieved some change for three SADC countries: Malawi, Zambia, and Botswana. And what I've said is, if Zimbabwe fails, if change fails in Zimbabwe, one thing that I would say, one day if I stand before the Creator, if people believe that there's a Creator out there,
Somebody, you just need to dismiss what Hopewell said, that you are
C10.
C10.
Well, yeah, sweet.
Allow people to trust
That is sweet.
you know,
That is sweet. That is sweet.
Just allow, dismiss that fact, and then
Oh, so yeah. So in 2003, when I was working in the insurance industry, we had a time when Zimra wanted to tax insurance policies, insurance and reinsurance policies as well. So they want to do VAT on reinsurance. Those who worked for Zimra in 2003, if you are here, please lift your hands. And if you ask your bosses, if you're not aware, why Zimra cancelled that program, and it took
because I was actually someone actually messaged me and said that I'm scared to speak on the space because I think Simba's a C10. So people actually believe.
Nah, don't worry. Don't. You know what? You know what? If I am a C10 and I brought freedom for three SADC countries, if I was a C10, right? And then you say such a thing. Then maybe if there was anything like that, I'm just saying. Absolutely. Nah, it's just
I'm just quoting what they said.
I see the difference between anyway, it doesn't matter. Let me just finish what I was saying. Is that in 2003, Zimra, the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, wanted to tax insurance policies. They wanted to introduce VAT on all reinsurance, and those were in Zimra back then in 2003 will remember in March at Jameson Hotel at a seminar. It wasn't a seminar, it was actually a presentation, a consultative presentation. Who stopped Zimra? And they would tell you there was a 23-year-old young man who was dressed in a green suit. In back then I had a green suit with me as a young man. And who embarrassed, who stopped Zimra, literally showed that there were problems, there were loopholes. And when I try to remember, I wonder how on earth did I manage to do all that when I was 23 to discourage these madalas who were trying to. These are men who are trained accountants, economists, and the like. And how did I manage to do that? I remember I worked with Kerina Chitsamatanga, who was my boss. She was the finance director of the company I was working for. and just did this. I did this alone, and I assured her that I was going to stop Zimra. And actually, it's weird, but such things they made me believe over the years. When I eventually went into mainstream journalism 5 years later, that look, change can happen if I could do that without a single undergraduate degree, because I was still at university. I didn't even finish my first degree at that time. If I could do that, there should be ways that other people who are way more competent than me could do if people come together to confront people. And that's why over the years, I've dedicated my life to doing that. And even in the UK, there's some policies that have changed simply because people have said, no way, we're not going to allow this to happen.
I have a question for you, Simba. Sorry.
Sure,
in my inbox, they say if Simba and Hopewell have the same goal, why do they not get along?
That is nonsense. Just please don't read that. Don't read that, please. Right. Hopewell, if anyone mentions Hopewell's name, they must mention fake Cabs wealth. Hopewell, okay, before you mention his name. Please, that should be a discipline. Do that as a discipline. You protect your community that way. Hopewell is still to account for that fake Cabs mortgage that he claimed earlier on, and then later on he revealed it was in fact United Kingdom money. So never mention Hopewell at any time. If you love your country, you need to understand how dangerous disinformation characters are. And I've deliberately posted here a congratulatory message that you see to a journalist, a female journalist in Botswana, who contacted me 5 years ago to expose their own Hopewell Chin'ono character, who was destroying Tswana's community. At times, he was publishing disinformation in support of people, and then he would publish disinformation statements against the people in favor of the ruling party led by Masisi back then. It was difficult to expose this Hopewell Chin'ono character 5 years ago. Little did I know that the few tips and drips that I was sharing from my findings, my investigation on their own Hopewell character, were going to strengthen Botswana society and help them to stop and to remove the ruling party. And today, as you can see, their country is being led by a revolutionary leader who is a Democrat, a man who fights for the poor. I'm sure people are seeing the things that are happening right now, the statements that the president has been making over the months. Things are changing. It's the same thing with Zambia, which I also assisted in stopping disinformation there. Same thing with Malawi as well, a country that I helped, a community I helped when I physically worked with Moses Kinkuyu, who is now the information minister over there. And you can see the infrastructure and the changes in Malawi. Things might not be perfect, but there has been some change. So I've posted this so people can see the damage that happens to people's country when you tolerate a Hopewell character in your nation. This Hopewell character was stopping the Botswana people from removing the ruling party. It's the same way that Zimbabwe is under the same situation, the same circumstances. And so Hopewell characters are not innocent people. They are not your friends. They are not people that you can just mention willy-nilly and you just leave. These are characters who can actually stop your destiny. And they have stopped people's destinies until the day that they were unmasked. So please never mention Hopewell's name without saying fake Cabs wealth, Hopewell Chin'ono, who is failing to name the UK dealership that gave him sports car wealth in 1996 to buy his first home. If you do that, then you will protect your country, you protect your community from contamination. Disinformation is dangerous. It's not a bubble gum that you can chew today and just say, well, it's innocent, I'll just swallow it. It's poison. It destroys a society. And right now he's been publishing disinformation messages to accuse Nelson Chamisa and to say that Nelson Chamisa is ineffective, that he is incompetent, he's not helping Job Sikala, that he's not helping Blessed Mhlanga, and his lawyer there is ineffective. But look, the same man is there on video today. He is revealing he has rescued Blessed Mhlanga, another journalist. So this is what it is, folks. This is what this engagement is. I'm hoping that this kind of helps Hot Seat.
It's not that I'm trying to attack you. I think
no. It doesn't matter. But I was just saying, if we're gonna mention Hopewell, you need to mention that he's a fake CABSwealth. Yeah.
It's important that you can.
Okay, your line is breaking.
It's important that you.
Your line is breaking.
Okay, keep talking. I'll be available in 1 minute. Okay, 1 minute.
Okay,
1
sorry.
minute. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Yeah. Yes, I can hear you. We can hear you now. Right, we're going to be playing the video quickly.
Ms. Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said on some federal weeks. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Ms. Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said on some federal weeks. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Ms. Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said on some federal weeks. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Ms. Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said on some federal weeks. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Ms. Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said on some federal weeks. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and he's also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay on some this given at least essential address. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga was allowed. been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on some federal given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions because in the judge said Spain on something. Given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on something. Given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on something. Given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on something. Given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on something. Given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on something. Given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on something. Given this essential this but once every Friday let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and because in the judge said Spain on something. this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare and would interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay that honor is something. It's given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay that honor is something. It's given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay honor is something. It's given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay that honor is something. It's given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay that honor is something. Given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay that honor is something. It's given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay that honor is something. Given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. I think the judge said stay that honor is something. It's given at this essential address. We report once every Friday at CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay on something. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay on something. This essential at this. But once every Friday, let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay on something. Given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay on something. Given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay on something. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay on something. It is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted bail. certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport.
Zimbabwe rise up and seize upon the moment.
Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed.
Zimbabwe rise up and
admitted
seize
well,
upon
certain
the
conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay
For this is just a forest state of what is our delight. For this is just a forest state of what is our delight. For this is just a forest state of what
every
is
Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. That was Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Those are the Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you.
Zimbabwe rise up and seize upon the
Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something.
For this is just a forest state of what is our
given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something. Given at this essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something. Given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed. It admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said, stay on something.
Zimbabwe, rise up and seize the
this potential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you.
For this is just a forest state of what is ordinary.
Miss Bella Pio was allowed and admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on some further things. This essential this. Report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Bella Pio was allowed and admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on something. This potential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Bella Pio was allowed and admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the Miss Bella Pio was allowed and admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Bella Pio was allowed and admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Bella Pio was allowed and admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Bella Pio was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say DRRA must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Bella Pio was allowed and admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, staying on something. This essential at this. We report once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions were imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions were imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Those are the
Zimbabwe rise up and seize upon the moment.
This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions were imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions were imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Those are the This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions were imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Those are the
Zimbabwe rise up and seize upon the moment.
This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions were imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Those are the This Spanish appeal was allowed and admitted to bail. Certain conditions were imposed. And the judge said, stay on something. This essential test. But once every Friday, FCID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Those are the Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given at this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given at this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. It admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given at this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given at this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given at this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given at this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this, given at this essential address, but once every Friday, let's say Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga appeal was allowed and admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said Spain opponents something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the judge said stay on something. Despite this giving address to essential address, we report once every Friday. Website Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, on something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, it's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, it's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, it's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, it's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, it's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, it's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well, certain conditions and imposed. In the judge said, it's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday that CID Harare must not interfere with witnesses and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. It's given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say IDRRA must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. Yeah, those are the conditions. Thank you. Miss Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted well. Certain conditions have been imposed. In the gate set, stay on a something. Besides, it is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Thank you. Ms. Mhlanga's bail appeal was allowed. It's been admitted to bail. Certain conditions have been imposed. I think the judge said stay for the owners and some further weeks. Besides, it is given at least essential at this. We report once every Friday. Let's say ID Harare must not interfere with witnesses, and is also required to surrender his passport. And those are the conditions. Thank you.